Hey everyone, how we doing today? I'm going to go through my most recent single, Tough Conversations, kind of take you through the track and most of the layers that are on this track. There's quite a bit. I'm going to go through some of the techniques I use to mix it and all fun shit like that. So a bit of a disclaimer, for the purposes of this video, I had to print a bunch of the stuff with plugins on it. I left a few plugin chains in just to kind of see the groundwork of what I would do for some sounds, but a lot of stuff I had to print to get this recording to be all nice and smooth. But yeah, anyway, let's jump into it. So this is a long song. It has a bunch of different movements, a beginning part, a middle part, and an end. The beginning being soft, the middle kind of building tension, and the end being like explosive and loud. And something that I wanted to sound like a movie soundtrack, something I wanted to sound, I hate to say epic nowadays because that word has gotten used a lot in the past like 10 years, but I wanted it to be an epic theatrical kind of thing by the end of the song. So yeah, let's just go right into it. I'm just kind of going down the session from the top. I have everything grouped in the session and lowered a bit for the purposes of mastering, because I sent this out to get mastered by Billy at Two Worlds Recording. Shout outs to Billy, you're the man. On the whole mix, besides the master chain, I have just like 20K filtered out and below, just to kind of clear up some headroom and give it, the space that it needs. But jumping into the drum set, so there isn't drums. There's like an electronic kind of drum kit thing going on, but up until about 4 minutes into the song, that's when the real drum set kicks in, and then it kind of plays throughout the rest of the song. So let's just hear that on its own. So yeah, just gonna flat out say these are MIDI drums. These are drums from the Steven Slate library in Contact, which is a library I love. So if I had a choice, I would play all these parts in the studio. I would definitely sit behind a kit and play it, because that's the most natural thing to me. That's how I actually write these parts. I sit behind a kit that I have at my brother's house, but I don't have the ability to record it and make it sound to the quality I want. So I'll end up writing a lot of stuff on a real drum kit, and then I'll take it to the computer and just tab it out and put it in and click it in as if I was actually playing it. One day down the line, I'm sure I'll end up recording real drums for a song at a studio or something, but it's a money thing, it's a time thing, and it saves me hundreds, if not a couple $1,000s. So this Steven Slate library in Contact is great. A lot of people Get Good Drums, stuff like that. Maybe one day I'll mess around with those libraries, but it's definitely working for me for this type of sound. So again, I have things printed. Normally my plugin chain is filtering to start, compression, EQ. On a kick drum, I would probably put R-Bass from Waves. That is a great plugin. Definitely adds some oomph to any kind of bass or lower frequency sound, or it'll just add in frequency. That thing is like magic on kick drums. But yeah, let's hear that by itself. Got it going to a small drum room reverb. I'll go through all of these sends at the end of the video and just show you what they are. But I have there's only 6 sends in this track. Sometimes I have more, sometimes I have less. Going to our snare drum, which is a pretty loud, bombastic thing. It has a snap to it. I had to do my best to humanize it because it can really snap, and that's what I wanted it to do at the end. Beginning parts of the song, it's a little bit more delicate. I had this reverb automated quite a bit, so towards the end of the song, it's really just slammed up over here. See, this is the big part of the song. Just wanted that tail to come out a bit more. And in the beginning part of the song, just kind of like a brush, soft hit. Moving on to our toms. They're pretty simple, pretty much same kind of chain, just filtering, compression, EQ, maybe a bit. Sometimes on the Steven Slate samples, that's kind of hard to say. Sometimes I'll want to bring out the highs a bit because I find that they can get lost 10K and up. I'll kind of want to give them a bit of a spruce, if that makes sense. I do that usually by my UAD Pultec EQ, which is kind of a lifesaver. That EQ really is very musical, and I like it a lot. I'll just throw in these toms here. I get fairly specific. I get more specific when I edit vocals, but with drums and stuff, if a velocity of something isn't right, I'll end up automating it, automating panning, automating sends, all that good stuff. Moving on to cymbals, obviously they can eat up a whole mix. I left this hi-hat chain in here just to kind of show you what it would normally look like. So we got some filtering for the hi-hat. You don't need anything below like 115 or 150 hertz and just down. So I kind of filtered that out. Used the Ableton compressor on it because I liked the character of it and I didn't want it to mess with it too much. Sometimes this adds a bit of color that I don't like, but for the purposes of this hi-hat, it was all right. This is like a U8076 kind of compressor. Just added another layer of compression on this just so it kind of squashes it a bit. It's got about 7 dB of gain reduction. I wanted it to level in with everything else. Most everything on all these sessions have like a fair amount of leveling compression just to bring it all up dynamically and squash it a bit just so it all sits like in the same kind of range. And on this hi-hat and a bunch of other of the cymbals, I tend to like a lot of wideness. Yeah, I like this Ozone Imager a lot. Pretty big fan of it. I used this to spread stuff, and I also use, again, I'll go into all the sends at the end of the video, but I also use a H delay. So yeah, this is the hi-hat chain. All the other stuff I froze because it's pretty much the same chain, but just some tweaks here and there. I know on the ride cymbal chain, I probably put a Ableton saturator on it just to give it a bit more of a bit more juice, if that makes sense. So that's the whole drum set. This is on the big part too. There's dynamics to this, as you can see. Like, I kind of slowly, part by part, put this reverb on the snare, stuff like that, before it's like this. You know, getting a bit more and more. The whole point of this song is to build in tension as it goes along and build in power and build in emotional quality. I don't know, I would say the drums try to reflect that, and all the layering in the song reflects that. I wanted it to kind of like slowly build anxious energy. So bass guitar, this is a guitar rig tone. I recorded this with my Ernie Ball sub. Nothing too crazy, just a wide kind of bass amp, nothing too distorted. Sometimes I like bass distortion, but I felt that when it kind of kicked in, it should have just been pretty transparent. Just really like holding the foundation. A couple things like that in this song are very essential. I have it spread pretty wide actually, and I think I did that via the CLA effects. Or the CLA bass has a widener on it. One of those plugins has a nice like widening parameter. Have it automated a bit. Most like everything in this session, just sometimes it needs to climb. I'll just do Basin Drums for you guys. You can hear that. Towards the end, gets a bit more powerful. Yeah. So this electronic drum kit that comes in throughout the song, definitely a cool little element. Something I never really experimented with this project, Secret Gardens, before. But I kind of want to start throwing some more like glitchy Postal Service inspired kind of drums. And I think I got to do that with this. I had these in a drum rack, but I printed it. It's basically just a couple Casimir samples. There's some like random percussion in here, and just I had like a nice thump kick. Definitely a little bit of bit crushing going on with that snare kind of sound. Yeah. And I did that via Ableton's Redux plugin, which is pretty rad. I think it crushes things pretty nicely, and then just some EQing to correct that, make sure no frequencies pop out and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll make like the bass sidechain compress and stuff off just a kick drum sample muted in the song. There's also like another auxiliary hi-hat kind of piece, which was to go with the hi-hats that are on this. Had them kind of pan left and right a bit, give it a bit of width, just kind of tightened up where the frequencies are. Yeah, and then Ableton's Redux stock plugin again. That's a nice complement to the real drum set. I don't know, mixing both kind of just provides a lot more like tonal clarity and stuff like that. So the thing that arguably takes up most headroom in this song would definitely be guitars. If I just play you the end, it's like in your face, like way too big. No, sorry. Gets pretty abrasive to listen to, but there's a decent amount of layering there. Going into the layers, I kind of have them separated like dirty and clean. I like to do groups of groups of groups. Helps me mix and helps me organize a lot. More driving kind of riff here. Which is funny because when I start making songs in a session, I'll like put notes up top, like footnotes of what I want to do next before I like end the session for the day. And so this says more guitar driving, and then I went and did this after I wrote that note like the next day when I started working on it. The whole point of this song is tension, 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 tension. You just want to build tension, and then it builds up to that like cataclysmic type of ending. So that part kind of evolves to more open. A lot of open strings on that. For this sound and most of the other guitar sounds, I've been using Guitar Rig. Sometimes I record my actual amp. I don't think for this song I did because I needed a lot more control. And I also just got a Kemper recently, but that was after I completed this record and after I mixed it and everything. So yeah, this Guitar Rig. Sometimes their amps are not for me, but a few of their effects and like stomp boxes and stuff are incredible. And I swear by them, and it's kind of crazy. Like it's so hit or miss for me. So I think this is their orange amp simulation, and for the reverb, and the tone, I just kind of put a tube compressor like right after the amp. Yeah, you have to compress these a lot to make them like really come out. Definitely compressed it after Guitar Rig. When I put reverb on any guitars via Guitar Rig, it's usually the little reflector reverb. That thing saves my life. It is so versatile, and I just like it's so good. It has like almost any tone I want, and I use it for a lot of the guitar textures. That really just like sells the song to me when I'm composing. I named it Dirty Ass. This is a high gain amp. I forgot which one in Guitar Rig, and I put a whammy before the amplifier. So I had the whammy on like a octaver kind of setting, like halfway dry and wet between like an octave up and octave down. High up on the strings, picking and tremolo, going really fast. So here's it by itself. And I had to automate it down because it kind of like lost control when you let that note like ring out. So and then I brought it back up for that like swell in volume with that main melody at the end. I resampled it and reversed it. Yeah, so it creates like a nice like melody and then fade in and then melody and then fade in. A lot of other things are doing this in the song to accentuate this melody. We have another like shreddy kind of layer. This is more like constant tremolo. There's two parts here, and one of them's left, one of them's right. They're harmonizing with each other. Definitely helps bring out that melody a lot more. The harmony kind of climbs up at the end, but it starts out here. Yeah, super abrasive, but really intense. Sometimes moments like that are okay, and you just got to let them fly. Yeah. Trem stuff like that is super rad, super appropriate in huge parts of songs. Moving on to some clean guitars. We have the main one that you hear throughout pretty much the whole song. Very delicate. So this is another guitar rig sound. It's their orange amp. A few things about this sound. I like barely picked it, like with my fingers, just like very lightly, and I let the compression kind of do all the work because that produced a better tone than me like slapping the strings, for example. I was definitely influenced by a song called The Ice is Getting Thinner by Death Cab for Cutie. I definitely was like, oh, I want that tone from that song here because I think it would fit the best. And I messed around with the pickup and my guitar a bit, and it just sounded like butter. Has such a delicacy to it that this is like what made me start writing the song. I had that tone up, and I just started messing around with chords, and then yeah, very tension building. Something I really wanted to convey because I was trying to paint the picture of a broken place, a really sad, kind of just desolate soundtrack to stuff. So this really just got it set, got the tone set really nicely. Kind of changed up the part halfway through the song. Moving on to some of the more, like, I called it dirty clean because that's kind of what it is. This is kind of more as the drums start coming in. You want to accentuate stuff and not have the guitars get lost within the drum set. There's I compressed these on the group just to bring them up to par with everything else. There's that same reverb as the other part, but there's a bit of delay washing over, so as the chords are finishing up, you hear the It's a nice tape delay sound in Guitar Rig. Arguably the most important part of this song is the textures. On that little reflector reverb, I basically, I'll pull it up right now on a track to show you. Yeah, this thing is the jam. For those texture kind of sounds, I'll go to like the XXL settings and just pop the decay up, dry and wet, maybe like in the middle somewhere. And you just go and you just play notes and kind of try other notes and see how they wash over and what chords they create. And that's a lot of what I do for this project, Secret Gardens. And it's a lot of what sells post-rock and makes it such an endearing genre for me. So I'll play you some of the textures I was messing around with. You can probably hear this one throughout the song if you've heard it before. It creates this washing effect, and it just has a very emotional feel to it, and yeah, just helps paint the picture a lot. I have another texture here. Sometimes I layer multiple. Sometimes one's all you need, sometimes you need like 5, who knows. But yeah, this definitely painted like winter landscape. Bam. Desolate, cold, snowy, that's exactly what I wanted. Well, this has a bit more reverb in it, but this is also like another auxiliary guitar part, so have it kind of fading in. Definitely a little more pretty, but I wanted something a little bit different to help move the groove along. I'll put this in with. With the drums in, it kind of had a nice feel to it. Like I could have made the song just with these electronic drums and made more of like a remix IDM kind of feel. But I decided to go huge instead. And then, boom. Yeah. So moving on past guitars, we've got some bells helping out those main melodies. So I got 2 bell sounds here, and also these bell sounds are going with the main melody at the end. So we got one Celestia sound from Contact in the Lumina library. Yeah, the Lumina library, which was a bit thin, and I liked it. I liked the click of it, and when I put it in reverb, it sounded great, but a little too thin. So I got an Ableton sound, kind of like an Ableton Bell sound from Operator, one of their stock instruments. Has a nice full sound to it. That's the Operator sound. Moving on to some of these FX at the end here. I had to resample the whole song. So here's what that sounds like. I did it like with clean guitars and then dirty guitars so I could have control over it. So here's the clean, sorry. And there's also some sub stuff in there, some reverse kicks. A few other parts in the song. Just kind of getting that that swell in to be real nice. So moving on to some synth stuff. Definitely takes up a lot of headroom in the song, like between the synth and the strings. Yeah, the only really like electronic synth kind of sounds I had when the song starts getting more driving at the end. And I got a massive sound, FM8 sound that I kind of modeled after a Tycho song, which is super sick. And I have those 3 kind of working with each other. Let me just play you one by one what they are. So this is like an arpeggiated like synth sound. Just put in the arpeggio in the MIDI. But then I also put some beat repeat on it. Make it glitchy, fuck around with it. Beat repeat is a super sick stock plugin from Ableton. And if you know the parameters, you can make something just like have a bit more of a glitchy feel to it, which is definitely something I wanted for this song. So there's 2 sounds doing that though. This is kind of backing it up, giving it a little bit more bass. And then working with those 2 sounds is this. It's kind of like a bell pluck kind of thing, but with some good reverb. I kept the chain from this because it's an FM8 sound, it's an Ableton stock reverb, a saturator, and an EQ, and that's really it. But it's like this beautiful, rich, warm, like... Yeah. Super, super sick. I think I have it sidechain compressed too, I forgot. Sick. So, next up, I have some sounds from Exhale, which is such a sick Contact library. I love, love, love it. A lot of their sounds and a lot of stuff in that can really add some brightness and just like totally twist a song or a mix around, and such cool vocal layers. But yeah, I'll like play the whole song, and if I take out this layer, it's like night and day difference. It's there's just no like brightness or breath to the mix. It's crazy. And I just have like a pad kind of sound. You can do so much crazy stuff with Exhale. And on the chain is just some reverb. Pretty long decay time. Some saturation and compression. Just to kind of like level things to where everything else was. Just kind of mixing two sounds with each other. So now it's not in. Now I'm going to put it in. Yeah, just has such a nice breadth and tone to the mix. There is an E-piano, which is kind of holding more of the foundational layer of the mix. Backing up my guitar a good amount. It's a super smooth sound, mostly lows and pretty compressed. Has a nice sustain to it, which I really liked. This is from FM8, this sound. So it just backs up the guitar really nicely. If I could go find that guitar. There's so many freaking tracks in this song. Yeah, they just mix together tonally really nicely. Creates like a nice, just baseboard of tone. And then the bass guitar kind of rounds out the sub frequencies of this. Underneath this, I have some real piano. Yeah, just kind of like accentuating those. Boom, 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 boom. Played around with velocity a lot more as the song kind of evolved. Like if you go to the end, it's a lot more slammed on the keys, which is, I got inspiration to do that from like the Halo 3 soundtrack. Like dun dun dun. That shit just, that piano tone is just so bright and it's like just slams and it's super processed and compressed, but it just sounds incredible. One of the main things holding this melody together is the strings. I would say probably it's the loudest layer that's playing that melody. So here it is by themselves. So these are pretty compressed again. It's a nice 7th chord that just really just like... I definitely used my UAD Pultec EQ to bring out a lot of the highs of this part. This is the ensemble palette from Spitfire. That Contact library is a very good one. And yeah, it worked out perfectly. It's really versatile if you know how to use it. The ending of this I wanted to be like a movie soundtrack, like someone's dying or some crazy shit. Really emotional, a lot of tension. That's exactly what I wanted, and these strings helped out with that a lot. I had another layer that I had to resample because I wanted more control over the highs. Yeah. Saturated this a bit more just to get it to peek through in the mix a bit. That already takes up so much headroom. Keying and ducking, had to use a bunch of that on the actual mix of this song. Putting the drums in without the guitars really quick. For this huge part, I actually had to dip the cymbals down a lot because you kind of don't even need them. Like, you need the attack, but the sustain of them, a lot of that frequency content is being covered by all the strings and the super tremolo guitars, and it's just all blaring kind of, and I needed to mitigate it somehow. But I think it conveyed across really well by the time it got mastered. Here's with some bass in. It was quite an ordeal getting all of that to behave with each other in this mix. We don't have too much left in terms of the layers. The main thing is this ambience, which is very important to almost any song I make nowadays. So this is just kind of a piano sound. I think I just played that one note and put it through a Waves H delay, and I turned it up and I resampled it. I got it to a point where the feedback was kind of looping to where it thinned out the sound, and it had a nice like beat over itself. I used Ableton's Beat Repeat plugin to kind of give it more of that warbly feel. EQ'd some of the highs out, obviously. It doesn't sound anything like a piano. Yeah, and I mixed that with this wind sample that is pretty much on the entire record. I found this on Splice, I think, and it was just absolutely perfect. It fits the whole record really well, just this blizzard, kind of desolate sound. I love layering stuff like this in my music. It just helps set the tone really nicely. This same sample is on like a ton of other spots in the record. You'll be able to hear it if you really listen closely. So this is kind of droning throughout the whole song, even through the big part at the end. That pretty much takes us through every layer specifically. I have 6 sends for this song and then the master chain. They're just different types of reverbs and delays mostly. H reverb, which I like to use a lot, but in different ways for different times. This is about a 4-second decay, not much of the early reflections, mostly tail washes and kinds of sounds. Use it on the strings a lot. I think I keyed this in at like a certain point of the song. It's just an Ableton stock delay. Pretty good if you just needed to do one quick thing and you don't need it to do anything crazy. This is another kind of drum room sound that I have a lot of the drums going into. Pretty quick decay, like 2 seconds, mostly tail, no pre-delay. I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of pre-delay. Here you can hear it. A lot of snare on this send. This is another snare kind of sound. I think reverb on the snare is one of the most important things. This is a bigger decay time, like 3 seconds. On to our next send. This is another type of drum room that I like bounce things between. I would either go to this one or the other send. Much shorter decay time. You can almost not really hear it too well. In some parts it's keyed up a bit more, but I might have also put some guitars to this bus. Sometimes I like double dipping on stuff like that just to keep it consistent. Finally, this last send is a sample delay, which I made from H delay, and I just set it to 23 milliseconds and put the feedback up a little bit, ping-ponged it left and right, and it sounds like butter. Use this on these cymbals a lot because it gives it that nice, like, big drum room sound, which is something I'm a huge fan of. On a bunch of records, like definitely on a few Caspian records, you can hear how the cymbals just like are totally left and right and just have this I don't know how else I'd describe it besides sample delay kind of tone to it. Master chain, nothing too crazy because I did send this to get mastered. A C6 multiband just to kind of bring out more of the highs. I'll play the whole mix so you can see how it's working. I wanted to bring out the kick drum a bit more on the subs of it, so I have it set to pretty much where only the kick drum triggers this band. I have a band up here on the highs that I wanted to like get pretty loud. and accentuate them a lot. And I wanted to kind of compress and dip back some of the mids and high mids. Just felt like it needed some touching up overall as a mix. Bringing back in more clarity, which once you hear the difference, you're like, I can't go back, is a matching EQ that I put over the whole master. I applied it from like a pink noise guide. Only just a little bit, not too much, because when you drag up this amount fader, it just like goes crazy. Kind of evening out some of the harmonics, giving more highs, taking out a bit of the sub stuff. Ozone's really good at stuff like this. They're a pretty genius company. And then I have another batch of Ozone. I have some more EQ. Kind of doing the same thing, bringing back a little bit of the lows, just slightly up from the matching EQ, and bringing up a little bit more of the highs, not as much as the matching EQ, and it's not as like precise, but just generally I wanted the cymbals and the crispness of the guitars and stuff to kind of peak out a bit more. Yeah, that's pretty much it actually. So yeah, that's Tough Conversations. If you guys liked me doing this video, if you thought it was cool, let me know. Let me know if you'd want me to change it up a little bit to talk about different things about the song. But yeah, I'll play you out and I'll just kind of like solo layers and build them up at each at a time. So thank you guys so much for watching. I have a record called Tundra coming out on January 22nd. I'll totally do more videos with other songs on Tundra or old songs if you guys want. Stay tuned for next time and keep being sick. Later.